Joining me now in the Sunday Morning Futures exclusive is Tennessee Senator Bill Hagerty on the Senate Foreign Relations, Banking, and Housing and Urban Affairs Committees. Senator, it's wonderful to have you this morning. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Maria. It's great to be with you this morning.
I'm going to get back to the tax cuts in a moment, but we have to begin on Syria. President Trump tweeted out, put a post on Truth Social yesterday, and he writes this: Russia and Iran are in a weakened state right now, one because of Ukraine and a bad economy, the other because of Israel and its fighting success. I know Vladimir well. This is his time to act. China can help. The world is watching. Give us your sense of what took place in Syria over the weekend and how this fits into President Trump's incoming foreign policy, sir.
Well, what we've seen is a 53-year regime of the Assad family completely collapse in the space of 13 days. This wouldn't have been possible had Israel not taken its own best interests to heart and take out Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. That set off a series of activities that actually brought us to this point. Again, this was against the recommendation of the Biden administration. And to put a finer point on it, Maria, just this week, after Hama fell, and it was obvious that everything was moving toward Damascus, that Syria was going to fall, that Assad would be out, the Biden administration was working back channel, trying to relieve sanctions on Assad, trying to normalize relations with Syria. This is how out of touch they are. It can't come soon enough. January 20th, when President Trump comes into office, we're going to see a complete sea change. But today, what we're seeing is a massive shift in power. Iran is a paper tiger right now. They lack air support. They've had to step out of the region. Russia has had to step back. They don't have the ability to protect and defend. Again, they're wrapped around their axle in Ukraine. This is the perfect moment, I think, for President Trump to bring the architecture that he built with the Abraham Accords back into play. He's already built the architecture. His allies in the region, America's allies in the region, know how to use this architecture to help rebuild Syria in a much more positive way. We can facilitate that with solid diplomacy, but our allies in the region are in the place to actually build this and redo this, and I think they're best positioned to help bring, again, peace and stability to the region. The Biden administration, the Obama administration were so off base trying to create pillars of stability with, get this, with Iran and with Syria, with the JCPOA and with their attempts to normalize Syria. The right place to start are President Trump's Abraham Accords. That's the foundation. Those can be used in the region. That's how we'll see peace and stability break out.
President Trump spoke with Zelensky as well as President Macron in France this weekend. What are your expectations for the war on Ukraine as well as the war on Israel in the coming first year of the Trump administration?
I think you see the way these world leaders are reacting. They have the same sense of relief that President Trump is coming to office that we feel all across America. The pain of the Biden-Harris administration has just been extensive. And it's not just here in America. It's not the pain we're feeling here, the fact that 72% of Americans think our country's on the wrong track. It's being felt around the world. The Biden-Harris administration has put us in a far more unstable place. President Trump has been clear. He wants to see an agreement reached between Ukraine and Russia immediately. He wants to see that settled. Those discussions perhaps are already underway. You certainly see Zelensky coming to meet with President Trump this weekend in Paris. I think the opportunity is before us to get this resolved. With respect to Israel, Israel's done an incredible job dealing with Hamas, dealing with Hezbollah. They've been allowed to do, again, despite the Biden administration's recommendations, they've been allowed to step up and do what they are capable of doing. Yeah. And the result has been a massive weakening of the sword of Damocles that has been over Israel for years, for decades, and that is Hezbollah. Hezbollah has been taken out.
Senator, let me move on to domestic policy. We're going to speak with Stephen Miller coming up in just a moment, Deputy Chief of Staff there at the White House. But I want to get your take on why the Senate is pushing the tax extension plan all the way to later in the year. Does this mean you all are planning two different reconciliation packages? I understand John Thune wants between $60 and $85 billion for the border wall, ICE deportations, and new energy permitting reforms, and putting the tax bill to extend those tax cuts sunsetting following that. Jason Smith, the chairman of House Ways and Means and the House side, does not want this. He wants the first bill geared toward taxes. What's the plan and why?
Well, the tax bill is an incredibly high priority for us. If it's not fixed this year, it's going to be more than $4 trillion worth of incremental taxes added to the backs of Americans. It's going to be a terrible impact on the economy, and we've got to see our economy strengthen and grow. That's what everyone expects from President Trump. It is a top priority. I've heard the talk about getting these other priorities underway. They're smaller, they're easier fixes. We've got to, though, look at the process. I'm willing to work through the weekends, whatever it takes to get this, all of this done as soon as possible.
But how tough is it going to be to do a second reconciliation? I mean, you don't need a reconciliation plan for the border, right? Look, Americans just voted overwhelmingly to put President Trump back in the White House, largely because of that border and inflation. Why waste reconciliation on the border? You don't need it there. Do you need it for the tax extension?
You definitely need it for the tax extensions, but there are legislative elements of what's going on at the border right now that we need to stop. So there are aspects of it that would all benefit from a reconciliation package. Whether we bring it together in one large one, which I would be fine doing, or if there's a path, and again, I'm just not clear on how we can get this done, but it needs to be done as quickly as possible, whether it's one or two. Again, my preference would be to do it all at one time as quickly as we possibly can.
So you would consider, do you think, is there a reason John Thune doesn't want to do it all together, that he's putting the extending of the tax cuts all the way at the end of next year?
I'm certain what he's doing right now is working with Russ Vought, the OMB, the people at the White House, the Budget Committee, to make certain that we have all the necessary pieces in place to achieve this effectively. The reconciliation tool should be available to us twice, but again, I'd like to see this done as quickly as possible. The momentum is behind President Trump right now. The American public has spoken. Again, we need to be doing this post-haste, and I'm happy to be here as long as it takes to make that happen.
Real quick, in terms of Treasury and the role there, there's also a big role for sanctions. Do you have any recommendations on whether or not new sanctions should be added to any of our adversaries right now as this incoming administration begins work?
The number one priority for incoming Secretary Bessent has got to be enforcing the sanctions that are already on the books. There's no end to my frustration with Secretary Yellen, who has told me in committee that, yes, they've imposed even more sanctions on Iran. I remind her, it doesn't matter if you put sanctions in the books, you must enforce them. They stopped enforcing sanctions on Iran the day they came into office. Rob Malley is gone now under FBI investigation, but he was the architect of this non-enforcement of sanctions, again, trying to appease Iran. And what they did was fund terror throughout the region. So we need to enforce what's on the books first and foremost.
Very good. Senator, great to talk with you. Thanks very much. Bill Hagerty joining us this morning in Tennessee.